And since you're expert here, I want to ask you, do you think it's healthier actually for the family members between, romantic relationship and also parents and their children? Is that healthier to have some conversation about emotions?
Yeah, and the good news is it only takes maybe a few seconds to make your close relationships aware of your emotional state. If we leave behind all of the explanations and the blaming and the rationalization, it might only take me 10 seconds to let them know that I might have a bit of sadness and some fear going on at that moment. And that can help them be emotionally in tune with my state instead of wondering and guessing why I might be behaving in a certain way.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very important topic is that when we guess what other people are experiencing right now, right? We may have this assumption that may not be accurate. And especially I know for children, they sometimes see parents upset. A lot of children may interpret that as they possibly did something wrong or the parents may not like them and cause a lot more anxiety within the children. And it's just going to carry this on for a long time.
Yeah. When working with kids, I like to practice helping them to build their own emotional vocabulary. For example, when a child's crying and very upset, to say, seems like you're very sad right now. And it's normal to feel sad when something bad happens. And it's okay. And, giving them more vocabulary to sort of practice and not trying to fix it or make them better right away, or starting to indoctrinate them with the art of emotional suppression. Say, oh, don't be sad, it's okay. We start to maybe teach them not to be okay with their emotions from a very young age.
Wow, I love that. Kind of like help children understand emotions are not scary thing. And to teach them or assist them how to accept emotions. I feel like
Right.
that's totally can be applied to patients with sleep disorders, right? I treat a lot of patients with insomnia. Many of them are so anxious about sleep and they cannot accept the sleep difficulties. And when they have emotions before bedtime, and then they just like, oh, someone have to comfort me, but nobody gonna comfort themselves.
I think it's essential for good sleep. In the my book talks about the 5 steps of radical emotional acceptance. The last step is having gratitude for our emotions, or the F-bomb word, our emotions. Um, if you have sincere gratitude, if you can find sincere gratitude for your fear, for example, there no longer is a problem. And we oftentimes have insomnia because we're trying to fix emotions, but we need to realize emotions are not meant to be fixed. They're trying to help us be aware of our status in relationships, with each other, with situations. And if we can have gratitude, we find ourselves in a state of peace, even in the midst of some intense emotions at times.
I like what you mentioned, which a lot of people may actually don't quite understand is emotions are not meant to be fixed. But a lot of people seek help, seek mental health help, at least. They are hoping to get rid of certain emotions or fix their problems, right? They think their emotions causing problems. How do you help people understand how to really change their mind around it?
Right. Well, there's a best-selling book that most people have heard of, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And this book talks about the art of sort of picking and choosing which emotions you're going to sort of allow in your life. And although there's some clever and good advice in there, it reflects what we hear in a lot of the psychotherapies and a lot of the self-help books, which is, how can we help you fix your emotions? How can we work through it? How can we deal with negative emotions and, get rid of those icky emotions? So if we redefine emotions as there is no such thing as a negative emotion. They're all good in some way. They're trying to help us, and we can instead become curious. How is this emotion trying to help me? So you can take this emotional part of yourself back as part of yourself.
Ah, wow. I like that direction to think about how this emotion is trying to help me, right? Even it's anxiety, it's fear, it's something we don't like. It may still serve a function that can be helpful if we are willing to take the message.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you also mentioned one concept sounds really important and cool. It's a radical emotional acceptance. Can you please explain more about that? What is that?
So there's a phrase out there, radical acceptance, that's common used in a type of therapy called DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy. And in the original writings, it talks about using this as a way to avoid some of the toxic emotions like anger and so on. So I wanted to redefine this. I love the concept of radical acceptance. So radical emotional acceptance is radical acceptance applied to emotions. We don't need to only radically accept reality around us and ourselves, but we can radically accept our emotions too, and realize that there's really no problem with the emotions, and try to tune into how they're trying to help us.
Oh, interesting. So let me try to understand this from a sleep point of view, right? So sometime, in our life, there are things we can control, there are things we cannot control. And when people cannot sleep well, they may feel like sleep, when they can fall asleep, is something they cannot control, right? And but there may be something they could control, like the behaviors before bedtime and what they can do, what they can avoid. And so sounds like if they can accept, okay, how to fall asleep, it's out of my control and it's okay, I can deal with it. At the same time, I feel anxious about not falling asleep all the time. And this anxiety possibly is telling me something. And let me face it, let me listen to it and accept that anxiety is going to be there before bedtime. Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah, it echoes back to Viktor Frankl, I believe, and his paradoxical intentions when it comes to treating sleep problems. I like to think that I take it one step further. And so, just instead of trying to give up on controlling our sleep, we can actually find a state of peace by finding, again, gratitude for the emotions. For example, I know on your shows before you've talked about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and we will, often think of the sleep limiting thoughts, right? I would add to that with my sleep limiting thought, for example, oh, I'm not gonna feel good tomorrow if I don't get any sleep. I would add an emotion to that, which is maybe fear. I have this fear that if I don't get any sleep, I'm not going to function well tomorrow. And finding gratitude that, yeah, that's true. There's a reason I'm having this fear. And it's making me aware that there is a potential threat, that I won't be as good tomorrow. And you can, as you master this, as you become good at becoming okay with the emotions, you'll know that you've successfully done it, because you will notice you go back to a state of peace, and oftentimes you will find yourself sleeping.
Mm. Wow. Yes. I like this. I hope more patients could really start using this. CBT, I feel like part of the work is to really correct some of the distorted thoughts, and including sleep related distorted thoughts. But when I was trained with my professor for treating sleep disorders, I noticed she's trying to use some of the acceptance based methods too, to really help people deal with some of these thoughts and feelings that really come up in themselves. And so I like the way you mentioned how to really face this and kind of like talk to ourselves in a slightly different way. And this kind of self-talk, I guess it can be very powerful to really make some change inside ourselves and generate some peacefulness.
Right. I think the caution is sometimes with the self-talk, we can fall back into that trap of trying to control or trying to fix the emotions. So if we have this agenda that, oh, if I only follow these steps, I'm going to make the fear go away, we've already lost the battle. We need to instead realize that the fear is good. It's trying to help us. And then there's no longer this war with ourselves.
Mm. Oh, the war with ourselves. I think that's very accurate, right? A lot of time we are really suffering. We are not willing to let something go inside of ourselves. And that actually come up with a lot of challenges I noticed in people. Like you can teach them the strategies and the concept behind certain things, and somehow just very hard for someone to apply that in their life. And at the moment or at night, when they start having feelings, they still like experience a lot of this disturbance inside themselves. They may still want to do things in their old way. They still want to control things. I know a lot of insomnia patients just cannot get rid of sleep medicine. They just feel like I have to. It's just like, no, I cannot stop taking this. I have to put something to put me to sleep. I eat something to put me to sleep, or else, bad things gonna happen. So no matter what you do with them, it's just really hard. So I'm curious, when you deliver radical emotional acceptance, any challenges you encountered with your patients?
Yeah, I do believe, it takes some coaching. I know as you do psychotherapy with your patients, it's not just about teaching them the principles and helping them to understand, but it's making it real in their lives. And that's why I love psychotherapy so much is it's almost like teaching somebody to ride a bike and then the joy that they have when they're really becoming good at it. um, I couldn't do psychotherapy with, millions of people. So in the book, I employ fictionalized characters to try to give some really tangible examples that are very relatable so that people can maybe help to kind of coach themselves to make these principles real in their lives.
Mm. Yeah, so if someone could have a therapist, that could be one way, right? But sounds like in your book, you really try to make this relate to our life. And with these characters, when people read your book, they possibly will uh, feel like that's related to what they experience day to day. And I haven't been able to read your book, but I know it's pre-order right now. But I guess people will have some strategies and some ideas by following the book, right? To know what to do.
Yeah, just really trying to make it as applicable as possible. I relied on several real life examples of those epiphany aha moments that my patients had, stuff that really helped them and changed their lives. I tried to put as much of that stuff in there as possible.
Oh, that's awesome. I know those aha moments. Sometimes it's just so interesting, and it's would even surprise a lot of patients themselves. They're like, I've been doing this for a while and I can see some progress, but not big enough. But one day there's something happened or it just accumulated to a certain point and they reached that point, they were like, oh, this is now it's totally makes sense. I definitely had patients like that before. They would go with their life and come back one day saying, now I understand the thing you told me before, now it's all connected. I understand it deeper, it actually works for me. Yeah, so I like to say sometimes as therapists we are planting a seed, and I don't know when the seed is gonna growing or whether it's gonna grow or not. And sometimes multiple providers plant the same seed, and eventually something gonna happen.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you know, some of those or some things can become weeds and sort of choke the seed from growing. one of those types of weeds is certain types of medications. We know with like benzodiazepines, opiates, the chances of making really good progress in psychotherapy quickly or at all can go way down if somebody's on certain types of narcotics.
Oh, okay. Then, because I know you are a psychiatrist, so you prescribe medication too, right? How do you balance that for patients when to consider certain medication, when to consider psychotherapy methods more?
It is a challenging sort of balance. And in a way, sometimes we could be perceived as waiters. We give the patient the menu of all the different options and the recommendations of the pluses and minuses, and with informed consent, they can sort of choose the treatment that they want. Oftentimes they don't choose what you might want them to choose. However, you try to provide the most comprehensive care. And I definitely have a bit of a bias towards psychotherapy. I think I swallowed a psychotherapy pill when I was in my residency training. So I really like to see changes that way. But I think there sometimes, is a place for medication, and the combination can help people. And it's such a individualized thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I also noticed when we talk about medications, there are some people they experience quite a lot of physical symptoms, emotions. When I talk to children, sometimes they don't quite understand their own emotions. But if I talk to them about, your body will react when you feel certain things, right? What does your body feel like? It works for some children, and I think for adults too. So, have you noticed any like physical reactions and how to use that help people really understand what they are working on and deliver this kind of great method?
Yeah, the second step of radical emotional acceptance is to name the F, or name the emotion. And I try to keep it very simple. I'll ask my patients to simply name the emotion and to describe, where they feel it in their body. Or sometimes we'll do it the other way around. What are the sensations in your body? And, what emotion might this be? And from that, we can sort of accept, like, okay, that's my emotional state, and the intensity is 90 out of 100. It's like, okay, well, what is that trying to tell us? What can we learn from this? Which brings us to the next step, which is to listen, try to be curious and learn what it's trying to tell you about your situation, your relationships, whatever your emotional radar is kind of trying to tune you into. I really do believe emotions are our sixth sense, where we actually get information, very valuable emotional data that we can't get from any of our other senses. So if we can tune into this superpower, it's going to be very helpful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you use a lot of analogies. I think that makes a lot of sense. I always think analogies are much easier for people to really understand the concept. And when you talk about naming emotions, I think that's not only important for children, but actually very important for adults too, right? I
Right.
actually have some adults coming into the office. I have this emotional chart, this kind of little faces for children. And then some adults, they're like, oh, there's so many emotional words. I have no idea. Can I take a picture of this so I can take a look and review it at home? And then I realized, wow, not every adult really knows so much about vocabularies of emotion.
Right. Yeah, I think those emoji charts are so valuable. They're luckily accessible in everybody's phone now for text messages. You can just scroll through the faces until you find the one that describes your current emotional state.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I was about to ask you whether there are good ways for people to really teach themselves and different emotions. So I know there are a lot of emoji charts online. You can just Google, and there are a lot of pictures. Are there any other ways? Of course, I think people can go to a therapist to work on that one-on-one, right? Is there any other good tools or any other good ways you think people can consider as well?
Yeah, those are great examples. You know, that's what I use a lot. I try to keep it very simple. Um, there's I forget the name, but somebody created an entire emotional galaxy, like listing tens of thousands of emotional words, and you can fly through the universe into different like solar systems, and each one has related emotions. For example, the emotion of feeling gregarious comes to mind, and I thought that was a fascinating sort of look at things. I'm sorry, I can't remember where that's from off the top of my head.
Wow, well, that sounds like a video game of emotion words. Whoever creates that sounds like very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned emotions are like senses. I think you also had some analogy in your book, like mentioning emotions are like colors.
Yeah.
What's that? How that is related?
I've noticed the patients find it very helpful to think of emotions as colors. It's everybody understands the sense of sight, and we usually don't walk around saying, well, that's a good color and that's a negative color. That's a color I want, and I don't want to have this color in my life anymore. Imagine, you'd be making yourself crazy if you decided to say, there's no red in my life today, no red at all. I don't see red. You'd be gaslighting yourself. Yet we do the same thing with emotions all the time. Oh, no anger. I don't have anger. Anger never happens to me. I'm not an angry person. When in reality, emotions like color happen to us. You look over here and green happens to you. You look over here and blue happens to you. The same thing with emotions. So if we get over the idea that we are sort of creating our own emotions or choosing or blaming ourselves for our emotions, we can sort of have a better relationship. Just like color is giving us useful data, emotions are giving us useful data.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that's an easier way to really understand, right? It's like just like colors, like what we see day to day, what we hear day to day. You cannot really avoid it. You cannot run away from it. Then how you really use all the data. And I live in Silicon Valley, Bay Area, and a lot of engineers here. Everyone love data, and emotions actually could be a type of data, and our thoughts could be another type of data, right? We are it just they are accumulating. No matter what we want, they are just there every day, and we are having a lot of this data, and how we react to emotions, to our thoughts, what happened afterwards, it's also data. Then do people really use this data or not? If I could imagine, if we suppress our emotions so much, we are not using the data, but they're still there.
I've made some of the best decisions in my life that I could not have made had it not been for the emotional data giving me senses of things that I otherwise just wouldn't have known. Um, and the same is true for the people I help. And so, yeah, I just sort of want to, tune people into their sixth sense so you too can enjoy this special power we have.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. I think if people can really understand this concept you mentioned and try to apply this to their life, it's a great way to empower ourselves to find out, wow, actually, we could live with emotions in a more enjoyable and peaceful way. Like it's not emotions always control us to do this, that. We actually could use emotions in a healthier way, I guess.
Right. Right.
Mm. Great. So, your book is coming out. I want audience know about your book. It sounds like a really awesome book with a lot of great concept in it. So when it's gonna be published and where people can find your book?
Yeah, it's gonna be in early January released. It's available for pre-sale now, and it's distributed by Simon and Schuster. You should be able to find it anywhere in the world that English books are sold. Um, You can come to my website as well, radicalemotionalacceptance.com, and you can see, more information about the book and some merchandise that we just decided to launch, it's kind of fun stuff about emotions and the F-bomb word and all. So
Oh, that sounds interesting. I want to take a look to see whether I can get some for my, office too. Since we work with people about emotions a lot, and we have children, we have adults as clients. So I want to see what are great things we can put in the office.
Awesome.
That's something like exciting. Yeah, wonderful. And any last wisdom you want to share with us if everyone's listening, no matter they have some sleep difficulties or they have some emotional challenges, like any last words you want to make sure everyone can take away today?
Sure. Yeah. Just imagine if your emotions are not the problem, how is that going to change everything for you and your sleep?
Mm, a lot to think about. Thank you very much, Dr. Wills, for taking our time, coming to the show, sharing with us your exciting new books. Really look forward to reading it.
Thank you, Yishan.
Okay.